So here we go.
Okay.
Shall we start, Annalie? What do you think?
Yes, I think we can start. I think so. There are many people already in the meeting, in the webinar. So I think it's time to start. It's time to welcome you all to this webinar, which is organized as a closure to the Music Land project. And I'd like to tell the amount of countries which are represented here today. We are people from 9 countries and many different institutions. Apart from the University of Huelva, obviously, we have people from the University of Barcelona, Valencia, Munich, Barcelona, Sevilla, Brazil, Pernambuco, Banska Bystrica in Slovakia, Universidade de Caixas in Brazil as well, Alicante, Leiria in Portugal, Castilla-La Mancha, Navarra, Liceo Machiavelli in Italy, Seville, Cordova, Ghent in Belgium, Lovina, Leuven, Universidad de Jaén as well, Bratislava, University of Bratislava, Duke University, Jaume I in Castellón, Politécnica de Valencia, Regent's University London, Cádiz, Liverpool, Gran Canaria, Granada, Madrid, well, and many others. I'm sorry if I don't cite you all. Really, you're really welcome to this webinar. First of all, let me explain some very simple technical issues. You can participate through the chat, or you can write also your questions in the question and answer section. There is a button, okay, at the bottom of the screen. You can write your questions if you want during the presentation, and our guest speaker today, Mireille Besson, will answer them at the end. And let me tell you something about the Music Land project. Music Land is like the short name for musical aptitude, reading fluency, and intercultural literacy of European university students. This research project, which is funded by the Spanish Ministry of Economy and Competitiveness, is led by the Real Research Group at the University of Huelva, whose principal researcher is Carmen Fonseca Mora. I guess all of you, or most of you, already know her. She has made this project possible by gathering around 20 researchers and PhD students from 30 Spanish and European universities and institutions. So we have worked together as a multidisciplinary team representing various fields of study: applied linguistics, psychology, musicology, neuropsychology. And the main objective of the Music Land project has been to study the factors involved in the reading process of adult foreign language learners. More specifically, the relationship with musical aptitude. In fact, the language-music relationship is the focus of today's seminar. But we have also analyzed the intercultural competence of European university students and the introduction of linguistic mediation in the language classroom. If you're interested in knowing more about the project, you can visit our website, musicland.net. But anyway, I'm sure you're going to enjoy today's seminar. So without further delay, I'll give the floor to Carmen Fonseca, the main researcher and the heart of the Music Land project. She will now introduce someone whose studies have been really crucial for us. So Carmen.
Thank you very much, Annalie, for your nice words. And I welcome everyone today, as well as we did yesterday with Dr. Krashen. And I will follow, before I introduce our very special guest speaker today. I want just to follow Dr. Krashen's advice and tell you a bit of our story of how Music Land started. And I have to say that it was in 2009 when just an article came across my readings, and it was entitled "Musical Training Influences Linguistic Abilities in 8-year-old Children, More Evidence from Brain Plasticity." And when I read that article, I said, my God, finally I found her. I found the people who are working on this topic that 20 years ago I started with my doctoral dissertation. And then I dreamt of the idea of really going again to this topic of finding the ways, the research tools of how to do that, and of finding people, contacting people with whom, other scholars with him to do that. And I wrote to Dr. Mireille Besson, Research Director of the Cognitive Neurosciences Research Center at Aix-Marseille in France. And never I thought the immediate answer I received. And she told me, okay, can I phone you? Can we phone both? And then we can talk about that so that we know how to do it. And as she was so accessible that really from then on, one of the best known scholars in Europe that researches, and today we'll talk about music and language. Yes, Dr. Mireille Besson said yes to help us. And she became our fairy godmother who helped to make come my dream true. So that of researching music and language. I have to say that Dr. Mireille Besson today, she is on her annual leave and she is doing yet, yes, the great effort to be with us today. Thank you so much, dear Mireille. Thank you for being here today, but thank you for all your help along all these years. And yours the floor. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Carmen, for these very nice words. And I have to say that I share all what you say in the sense of sharing with you this very beautiful project. I think it's wonderful that you were able to organize it with so many nice people. I think you have created a wonderful group of very good researchers who are really passionate by the topic and who have produced really very good science in the last year. And that's wonderful because I think it's going to be tremendously useful for education and to help children with learning difficulties and even normal children. So I think we are making progress all together. And I think it's really good. And I really hope that many projects like that can develop in such a wonderful atmosphere. And so I'm really happy to be with you. As you say, I am actually on vacation, in fact, and I'm sailing on my sailing boat. And now I am in a bar in Greece, and I am with you with this video. I hope that everything will be fine. Thanks to Annalie, we made a lot of trials this morning, and I think everything will be okay. And so I'm really happy to be with you. I think video is great in this respect because I could be with you even if I'm far away, but at the same time I think that nothing replaces human warmth that we have when we are together at a meeting, and that we can share discussions and meal and drinks and all the fun thing of life. So anyway, I'm going to start my talk. So I'm going to share my screen and let's hope that everything work fine. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so I can start. Okay, I would like to start to acknowledge the help of two of my last students, Eva Dittinger, with whom we conducted several studies. Eva has been very productive and efficient on the influence of musicianship on novel word learning. And it's a really fascinating topic. I'm not going to speak about that today because I chose to speak about other work that may be more directly related to education. And Mylène Barbarou, who also was a PhD student with me, who is a musician and who actually quitted science, even if she was really bright, because she decided to make violin. She wants to build violin, and that's what she did, what she's doing now. So what I want to do in this talk, I want to present you with a short historical perspective. I always think it's good. History is really important for many reasons. And even if I don't have much time, I will place the music and language comparison into a short historical perspective. Then we will think together about what is it to be a musician? What does it imply? And how can we explain music to a language transfer effect, which is something that I'm really interested in for several years. And then, you know, Steve Crashton yesterday said, a talk always have to be simple and you have to have a main point. The main point of my talk today is this big red thing, correlation is not causality. And I think it's very important. Lately, we have had some very strong discussion in our lab because people, you know, are doing a lot of brain imaging studies and they say things like, oh, you know, it's because Wernicke area is more developed that the child is understanding better or that the adult is. No, no, no. You know, there is no direct correlation. There is no direct causation between this. This is a correlation, and correlation is not causality. And that's something very important to understand deeply and to remember. And I will come back to that in the talk. And when you want really to test for causality, I think that in humans, you have two different ways. You have mediation analysis. I will speak a little bit about that, and longitudinal studies. And I will give you some example of both. And then I will conclude, and I give you the conclusion right now in case there are people who need to leave. And this is my strong point. I really want to emphasize them that more and more research is showing that music training positively impacts on various cognitive functions. And what we have lately demonstrated is that the effect is larger in children from low socioeconomic backgrounds. And I will speak about that today. And so in conclusion, I think we should all push for music training in education. I think there is a really big enjeu, a really big issue here. And that as much as research show, we can be on strong ground to advocate music training at school. So let me start with the historical perspective. Descartes in the 16th, 17th century was, you know, very intrigued by the fact that when you hear music, you want to dance often. And why is it? And so he had this funny theory that you have the animated spirit that are in your brain and that you go down to your muscle through the nerves. And therefore, since the music is fast, the spirits are moving faster, and therefore they made your muscle move and you want to dance. So I just want to give you an example of music that I really like and that always make me dance.
Llevo la marca en mi hombro izquierdo de la vacuna que me recibió. Ni me preguntaron, pero la pusieron porque era un derecho y una obligación. Y aprendí colores sin mapas y letras. La vida.
Okay, I have to stop, but I think this song, which is from Buena Fe, a group in Cuba, which I really like, it's really of circumstance with the vaccine, you know, and the corona and everybody getting the vaccine, I hope. Another person who is really interesting in history is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And he really thought about the relationship between music and language. And for him, primitive language were sung, not spoken. Why? Because at the beginning, life was easy, and therefore you only need language to sing, to express your emotion, primitive language were of passion more than reason. And I think that's a very important point, that at the beginning only express emotion. Darwin has a more, of course, evolution-oriented view in the 19th century. And for Darwin, music evolved out of language, and more specifically from the love call during the reproduction to attract the person from the other sex. And that's why, you know, all the species have songs, like bird songs, like animal communication, to attract the person from the opposite sex and to facilitate reproduction and evolution of species. And it's funny to note that this charming function of songs is still very present today. And I make you listen to this one. Oops, sorry. Sorry, I touched the screen. It's very sensitive. So you could feel that in this little excerpt from Traviata, there is all the beauty of the voice of La Callas, who moved millions of people. Alors, now I go to what is it to be a musician? To be a musician, you have to be very fast. You have to do many different things. If we think a little bit about it, first, of course, you have to develop your auditory perception. You really have to listen carefully to the sound to know if you are playing in tune or not. And to do that, of course, at the same time, you also develop your auditory attention. But it's not only that. Vision is also involved in when you play music, because typically you don't play music alone, you play music with others. And therefore you have to look at the chief, you have to look at the other musician, and you also have to look at your partition if you need one. You have to develop your motor skill. It's amazing how pianist is playing fast sometimes. So you really have, or violinist, all the coordination between the elbow, the hand. So it's really fine-grained motor skill. You also develop memory, because a lot of musicians play by heart. You know, when you practice your piece so much that you end up knowing by heart, and that's make training for your memory. And of course, you also train executive function, because you have to play together. Therefore, you have to play in rhythm. You have to withhold movements at some point and play at other points. You have to change. So executive function are really strongly mobilized. And finally, of course, you mobilize emotion in the way you are playing, and you are yourself moved by the music, and you move the other one. So if you think about it, being a musician is really multidimensional. And also being a musician, like a musician, a real musician, requires hours and hours and hours of training. There are some studies who show that a professional musician of something like 25 years has been playing something like 30,000 hours of music in his life to reach this level. So of course, when you play music a lot, then one can expect that you will develop these various cognitive skills and function. Is that true? Well, yes, there is some good evidence in the literature that music training impacts on auditory perception. You have more fine-grained auditory perception. You can hear differences in pitch or in rhythm that you not here if you're not a musician. There is not many study to my knowledge of auditory attention, but some by the Krauss group, Straight et al. There is some evidence that music training improves short-term memory. And recently with Eva Dittinger, we conducted a study in which musician and non-musician were retested 1 month later on novel word learning, and we found better long-term memory in musicians than in non-musician for the novel words. And also there is a lot of work on music training and executive function. I only cited 2 here, but there is really a lot of work. But what I'm mostly, and that's an important point, which is that when we think about this impact of music training on cognitive function, the question we always have in mind is it all coming from better auditory perception and better auditory attention that drives better memory or better executive function or better speech processing? Because since you are able to more precisely process the sounds, then you will be better able to retain them or to play with them. So that's what is called the cascade hypothesis, because it goes bottom up. It's because you have very good auditory perception and auditory attention that it improves the other cognitive function. But as I mentioned at the beginning, it is not obvious. I mean, this is still an open issue, because, you know, when you are playing music, you train also your memory and your executive function, for instance. Therefore, if you have a strong memory, it can have an effect by itself. So a top-down effect, because you have a better auditory memory, you will recognize the tune more easily, you will hear some language better, and therefore you can also have top-down influences. And I think it's a very interesting issue to try to disentangle what is bottom-up and what is top-down, and the answer will probably be a little bit of both, you know, because those processes are not mutually exclusive. What I've been also very interested in is the impact of music training on speech processing. And there are many studies. Carmen was nice enough to cite the first studies that we did published in 2009, showing that music training influence prosodic processing. But since then, there is many study on showing that musicianship influence categorical perception, which is very important in language, of course, influences speech segmentation, also very important when we learn foreign language, influences phonological awareness and reading. And I was very interested and happy to see that from the group Musilang that we mentioned at the beginning, there have been very interesting research coming out on the influence of musical aptitude on reading. I will come back to that later. And also recently, as I mentioned at the beginning, we demonstrated some influence of music training on musicianship, I should say, on semantic processing. So how can we explain this music to language transfer effect? How can we explain the fact that to be a musician, to have practiced playing a musical instrument for so long, helps you process language, helps you with speech segmentation, helps you with executive function, or more generally with cognitive function. One of the main hypotheses is that music and speech share the same acoustic parameter. When you speak about speech, you speak about intensity. You can speak very loud, very soft. You can speak very loud. You have the timbre of your voice. you can speak fast or slow, but there are also languages in which the duration of vowel or consonants will change the meaning of words, like for instance in Finnish. So those are called quantitative languages, also in Thai actually. So duration of vowel and consonants is very important to understand this language. And of course, pitch is also very important, specifically in tone languages, in which variation in pitch change the meaning of word. And tone languages are really widespread all across the world, not only in Asia with Mandarin and other Asian language, but also in Africa. There are a lot of tone languages in Africa. So you see, the point is that this acoustic parameter are as important in music to differentiate a violin from a trombone, or than in language to differentiate my voice from the voice of Carmen and Ali and all the friends here. So because those are the same acoustic parameter, being trained on them because you are a musician facilitate their processing in language. Now I'm going to go to another level, which is also something that I'm very interested. What is the brain doing in all this? And since the 90s, middle 90s, there have been a lot of studies of the musician brain to see what is specific in the musician brain. And there are studies which have shown that playing an instrument will have a strong influence on brain anatomy. For instance, when you play the piano, as you will hear Roberto Fonseca, who is also a Cuban pianist who I really like a lot. When you hear him play, you can really realize how fast he's going with his two hands and how much practice there is behind these motor abilities. And if you look at his brain, I mean, nobody ever looked at Roberto Fonseca brain, I think, but at pianist brain, then you will see that the area corresponding to the finger of the two hands are more developed than if you are not a pianist. And also the connection, the corpus callosum, that makes the connection between the two hemispheres is bigger, is more developed. Why? Because you have to transmit a lot of information between the two hands. So let me play a little piece of up. Sorry. I'm always impressed, you know, he's really such a wonderful jazz pianist, unbelievable, really. Playing so much music has certainly an impact on brain anatomy. And here is a summary of different brain regions that have been shown to be influenced by music training. So you see that, of course, you have area around the motor cortex here, whether you play the violin, whether you play the piano, whether you play the trumpet. In the case of the trumpet, people have demonstrated that it is a representation of the lips that are enhanced in the brain of a trumpetist. So you have all this motor related area. Oops, sorry. Can you see my mouse? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, very good. But more surprisingly, so you have the corpus callosum who makes the link between the two hemispheres, as I mentioned earlier. But you also have Broca's area, I mean, region of the frontal inferior cortex, where Broca's area is around here. Yeah, Broca is arise. And this area is enhanced in a musician compared to non-musician, and Wernicke also. So you see, it's really interesting to see that some brain areas that have typically been involved in language processing are also involved in language processing. And when you do some kind of meta-analysis, that I like because it shows you that language is not localized only in one brain region. Here you have something like 200 studies using functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, and who are interested in testing phonology, syntax, and semantics. And you see that these complex speech processing are really distributed across many different regions of the brain. So I think that that's one very important point that we may come back on in the discussion. But language is not only localized in Broca area or in Wernicke area. Language is really distributed in many different parts of the brain. And when you look at music, here it's not a meta-analysis, it's only one study. I dream of a meta-analysis of music studies, even if there are not so many, of course, than language. But to my knowledge, it has not been done yet. And you see that there is some overlap of brain region. You always have this frontal inferior gyrus and motor a little bit and temporal region that are activated. So basically you have overlap of brain regions. That is, you have similar or same regions that are involved in processing different aspects of language and in processing different aspects of music. And therefore, that can also maybe explain why you have transfer effect, because you have the same brain region that are activated in both activities. The problem with these studies is that this is correlation. That is, you take the brain of musician, you take the brain of non-musician, and you establish a link with brain anatomy or with brain function, okay? So you show there is a link, but you don't show the correlation of the link. You don't show that music is the cause of these effects, okay? You only show a correlation. Like when, for people who are interested in brain imaging, like for instance, when you do fMRI, you can do connectivity analysis. So when you do connectivity analysis, you are going to show that two brain regions are connected. But to show the link, the order in which the different brain regions are activated, you have to do what is called effective connectivity. That is, you have to show, for instance, that the auditory cortex is activated first, and then you have some activation of Broca's area or Wernicke area or of other region of the brain. And that you can only do if you do effective connectivity analysis. So speaking about behavior, the equivalent would be to do mediation analysis. And I discover mediation analysis actually thanks to the wonderful music and language project and group. And because they published some very interesting paper using structural equation modeling. And that's what I'm going to speak to you next, before to present some longitudinal studies that can also test for causality. And I will show you why. So mediation analysis. There is this really nice paper published by Maria Gomez-Dominguez, Carmen Fonseca Mora, and Francisco Machancoses in the psychology of music, and in which they were interested in understanding how music perception influences English learning as a foreign language when you are a Spanish speaker. So Spanish is the first language. And so the idea is as follows. So first, this seems a little bit complicated, but I'm sure you will follow and see how interesting it is. So here you have music perception, and you can test the ability of your subject in musical perception through various tests of pitch, intensity, duration, rhythm, timbre, tempo, all the variables that I mentioned already. And so you will have an idea of the participants' abilities in musical perception. Then you will also know how good your participant is in foreign language learning, in this case, English, because you will use various tests, letter sound knowledge, initial sound identification. So you have various tests that allow you to test the capacity for foreign language. And of course, you can use the same test to know your capacity in Spanish, which is your first language. And what you want to know is it the case that musical perception directly influence English learning, or is this influence mediated by your first language? This is what you want to, where is the cause? Is music perception really the cause of you being better in learning English because you have good musical aptitude? Or is it because you have good musical aptitude, you have had facilities to learn your first language, and that will influence second language learning? And here you see, so in this study, there were 63 Spanish-speaking English children, second grade of primary school, and so a large number of children. And what these results really show really clearly is that the influence of music perception on reading skill is fully mediated by the proficiency in L1 reading skill, okay? So in some way, this study really clearly demonstrates that if you have very good musical perception, you will have better reading skill in your own language, and that will help you have better reading skill in a foreign language. And I think this is a very elegant demonstration using mediation analysis. Another such example with a beautiful title, The Acoustic Dimension of Reading, Does Musical Aptitude Affect Silent Reading Fluency? By Fonseca, Bruyas, and Carmen Fonseca Mora, is the aim of this study was to describe how linguistic and cognitive variable and musical skills, so all together, influence silent reading fluency in Italian adult students who learn Spanish. So this time we still have a very large number of subjects, but we have Italian students who learn Spanish. And what is the model? The model, so that's nice with this mediation analysis, because you have really to carefully think about all the process that can influence what you want to study, and you have to formalize it, making a model. And here you have, as I said before, the different aspect of music, tuning, melody, tempo, etc. And that allow you to measure musical aptitude. And then you have some other tests, phonological awareness that we know is very important for silent reading. We have auditory working memory. We have segmentation, which are abilities that we know influence silent reading. And so then you test the model, and here what they found is that musical aptitude, the effect of musical aptitude was stronger than on silent reading in a foreign language, was stronger than phonological awareness or auditory memory. And that's also a very important result, because, you know, that really shows that, of course, there are always many variables that will be involved, and that will be very important, and that musical aptitude is really one of them. So I really liked the talk of Stephen yesterday, and I really I'm trying to learn Spanish as well, and I'm reading fiction, and I love it. But I still think that if you also practice music, and if you develop your auditory skill, you develop a musical ear that help you learn foreign languages. So that was for the mediation analysis that allow to test causality and to better understand the relative influence of the various variables. And I think it's really, this type of studies are really very important. Now I want to go to longitudinal studies and maybe a little bit more to music education programs. As you may know, there are many such programs all over the world. Maybe the most famous one is the one that started in Venezuela many years ago. It started in Venezuela, I think, in 1970 or 1975. And it was a program for all the children who were in the street after school, not doing anything. And so they had this idea of teaching them music. And so they put forward music classes, they give children instruments, and they have really trained a lot of very good musicians and trained a huge number of children. So it has a very strong societal impact, but no scientific evaluation. By contrast, there is a more recent project, which is called the Harmony Project, that has been developed in the suburban part of Los Angeles, in very disadvantaged part of the city, with very poor people. And this music program is dedicated to teach music to children who will never learn music if there was no this program. And here it's really good because Nina Kraus, who is a very well-known scientist all over the world and who has been doing wonderful scientific work with all her team, was asked to provide a scientific evaluation of this project. And so, and they did, and they published many different papers. I will refer to some of them later. And then in France, we have a program which has been put in place by the Philharmonie de Paris, that you may know, which is a big institution in a wonderful building in La Villette, a very beautiful building, modern architecture. And the aim of this program is also to that children from low socioeconomic background will have the opportunity to learn music, and they do that in class. So they conduct a music program in class, and we were asked to provide a scientific evaluation for this program. So we did. There was a school, several schools. I mean, one school dedicated to the program in Marseille, with children from the different grade, primary school, different grades. And we started this program in November, December 2015. Children were trained for 18 months, and we tested them again in May, June 2017. You see, the problem with longitudinal study is that they take a long time, 2 years to conduct the study. And also another problem with longitudinal study is that you have a very high attrition rate. So for instance, we started with 54 children, and then we end up with 35 children, which is not so much taking into account that we have the different grades. But, you know, that's one of the problems. And then the paper was finally published in 2019, you know, so 4 years after we started the project. So these children were involved in music learning. They each had an instrument that was given to them, and they could practice at home as well. But at school they practiced 2 hours twice a week, and they also had an orchestra class once a month. And children could choose their instrument, violin, alto, cello, trombone, clarinet. There were many different instruments, and they were self-selected instruments. So as we have seen at the beginning, playing music may enhance various functions, and therefore we had various tests, you know. So of course, we have tests of musicality to see whether children improve on the abilities that they are trained with, melodic and rhythmic aspect. We tested for general intelligence using well-known tests from the WISC-4. I show you some example later. We tested memory using the well-known digit span forward and backward. We tested attention using the D2R, reading and phonology, and that we had a French test which has been normalized and with thousands of French children from many different levels. And we also have a test of visual motor precision. So we had all these tests. I think we had one session for this test. We also have one session for the electrophysiology, because we recorded the brain activity of the children. But you see, until now, we have not yet processed all this data. So I will not present you the brain waves, but stick with behavior. So speaking about general intelligence, here you have some example of the tests that we use, which are all standard tests, okay? So they are normalized, and that's very important. So we have symbol search. For instance, you have this symbol and you have to decide whether it belongs to this symbol here, yes. Letter number sequencing, that's a difficult one. So for instance, I will tell you 4A3C, and then you have to work with this information in your working memory so that you put the number in order, 3, 4, and the letter in order, A, C, okay? So it's very difficult. And of course, when it increases, it's become more difficult. And I want to tell you a little anecdote with that, is that recently, in another project that we are conducting and that I will tell you a little bit at the end of my talk, I was testing some children, and one was really fun, and I made him this test, and he said, "Wow, it's too difficult, you burn my brain." And he was really funny. He was really attentive and stuff, really funny. But it's true that it is a difficult test. You have the test of similarities. You have to say in which aspect red and blue are similar, both are colors. And then this test that all the children really like, Raven matrix, that you probably all know. And you have to decide which one is light completing here. It's of course it's this one, but it becomes more and more complicated, and it's really interesting. And so if we look at the results, you see that you have an improvement. If you look at pre versus post training, you have a significant improvement. The effect size is small, but still, you know, it's only 18 months of music training. So we were really happy to find this significant increase. Now, what we did, and that I think is also very interesting, is to look what happened for all the children. Instead of having only general results, we look at all the children. And what you see is that here you have children who have a very strong increase. I mean, 20, a strong increase in general intelligence was found in 23% of the children. A moderate increase in 33%, and to our surprise, we found a decrease in IQ in some of the children, 43%. A decrease in IQ in 18 months, you know, of school. How can that be? And so we checked the literature, and what we found is that there is some old published studies showing that if you have a high IQ, like over 110, it tends to increase over the school years. But if you have a low IQ, it tends to decrease over school years, which is terrible. I mean, it is really terrible. It means that schools are not now playing the ascending role that they should, or not as much as they should. So it's really a big problem, and I have discussed that with several people. What was nice about our results is that you show that the practicing music reverse this tendency. And the effect was stronger for the children who had the lowest IQ. So it's really very interesting to see that the children who benefit more from music training were the children who had who started with a low IQ, while this effect was not as strong for the children who started with a high IQ. So very encouraging results. And there are many more recent, I don't know if you know Marta Farah, but she has been doing very important work on children from low socio-economic background, looking at the influence of food, of sleep, of many different variables. And so that's, I mean, that's very good to show that music training can counteract the effect of low socioeconomic background in some respects. We, of course, also tested reading skills, which also tend to be low in children from low socioeconomic background, maybe because they don't read fiction enough. You know, we discussed that yesterday, and because there is so many books at home. And so if we look at the results of meta-analysis on the influence of music training on reading skill, there is no clear evidence. But one point which is really nice, coming from the studies that I mentioned previously from the Harmony project by the Nina Kraus team, you see that reading score tend to decrease over 1 year in children from low socioeconomic background, but the children who were involved in music training remain stable. So it counteracts the decrease in reading score, which is also go along the same line as I was saying before. So we also find this. We also find a small increase of reading skill with music practice. The effect size was small, but still it was a significant effect. But the largest effect that we found was on concentration abilities. We found that this very significant difference from pre to post music training with the demos program, and a good effect size of 0.82. And if we look at the group effect, then you see that music training improves concentration ability for 63% of the children and 37 with no effect. So really that was a strong effect. And this is really good because the ability to focus attention is essential for successful learning. So if music allows you to focus auditory attention, it is really a big step forward. Okay, so in sum, what I have shown you from the demos program is that 37% of the children improve at least in the 3 tests, in the reading skill, in IQ, and in concentration activity, and 100 of the children improve in at least one of the 3 tests. So in some way, it's really encouraging. The problem with the demo study is that we had no control group. you know, it's really good to have a control group to show that the effects are specific to music training. Here we don't know, because any type of training, like cooking training, for instance, could also generate this effect. I don't think so. But we didn't demonstrate it was not the case because we had no control group. But we demonstrate that it is not developmental effect because we used standardized tests that are normalized for each age group. So the effect that we demonstrate of music training is not only linked to maturation and development, it is not linked to repetition because we use tests that are typically used when you want to use a test retest procedure. So they are very resistant to repetition effect. And the effect of music training are not linked to genetic factor here, since we take all the children from the school, okay? And they had not done music training before. So, so we were happy because in some way we scientifically validated the DEMOS program, and the people in Paris were very happy with us. But we are very happy because it's a very good measure of... Okay, so I see that I have been speaking very slow, enjoying myself. And so I'm just going to finish now with by saying 2 words about a new project that we have in school, and in which children are singing every morning for 20 minutes. So they are singing. We have a singer who comes to the school every morning and makes them sing, all different classes of the primary school. And us, we are evaluating that. And in this case, we have a control group, and what we shows is creative writing. So children write little text for 20 minutes. It's a writer who comes to school and who tells stories and who say, okay, let's imagine you are water. What will you do? And they speak about it, and then each child start to write text about, if I was water, I will give water to plants. I will, and so they come up with their story and they write them. And we have also one class of the school at each level, which is not following any specific training except the one at school. And so here we are going to measure behavior using very much the same test as the one that I presented you before. And we are also going to record brain activity, and this time not only EEG, but also MEG, which is a magnetic current that are associated with the electric current. And there are some, we can go into that in the discussion if you are interested, but there is some advantage in using MEG compared to EEG, and using both simultaneously is going to be very interesting. So with no further ado, I will skip the other longitudinal studies that I wanted to speak about because it's too much. And I will conclude by saying that I think I have convinced you that music training positively impacts various cognitive functions, general intelligence, attention, reading, short and long-term memory. And there is a lot of ongoing work on executive function and other function. And we are going to learn a lot from these various studies. And I think that really what was specific from this talk was to show you that it's very important to do mediation analysis or longitudinal studies. And using this approach, you can demonstrate that really this is music training that is the cause of the effect that you observe. And we were able to show that in children from low socioeconomic background who show strong effect. And so I'm really convinced of the importance of music training for education. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Mireille. Thank you for your very fruitful and work and for sharing with us all these nice results and information that you have been gaining during all the years that you have researching this. So we start with the possibility of questions. So for anyone in of the audience, you can use that button on for questions and answers, and you can also write any questions in the chat. So while people are thinking, and I will go, I want to ask you, I've seen that you have so many inspiring and so well constructed. So so anyone who wants to learn how to research this topic, you know exactly what are the instruments to be used, and we learned so much from you. And you talk about so many effects, but I wanted to know about one other effect you have not been mentioning, but perhaps it's there as well. And I was thinking, what does music training as regards well-being? What does music for well-being? Because I think this is something that perhaps we need as well. Have you done any work on that? Do you know, or any idea on this?
I think it's a very important point. I think well-being, you know, it's like a little bit what I was saying before of concentration abilities. Well-being is at the basis of behavior, and and if you are well, then you can learn better, for instance, of course. And so well-being is really an important factor. I have never worked on this because it's really a topic that by itself, you know, and I don't have the background um, to know which would be the best test to use. The only experience I had was when I worked in Cuba. I worked in Cuba for 1 year at in an hospital where they were doing rehabilitation for children with various disease. And we put together a music therapy group. And we had some therapists who were interested in well-being, in motivation. And we had some tests, but we never published these results. So I cannot tell you now. I mean, that's something that I should go back, but that's the only little piece of information that I know. But I'm sure that you know more about that than I do.
No, not yet, not yet. I know about the feeling, the sense of well-being, and of, I mean, mental well-being in this sense, that obviously then comes also to the physical one. No? But when students, for example, when we use musical input in the language classroom, and when students have been working with different songs and things, and on a project, in the end what we found is more a sense of social bonding among them, and anyway a sense of they wanted to belong to the classroom. They wanted to belong to that classroom because they felt they were understanding each other. And even if they were talking about, because in our groups, for example, they were from different cultures, because with Erasmus students with different perspectives, different languages, but they found out that even in their languages, that everything, that music brings them together. They could agree on that, and that
Yes,
gave them another
and you know,
perspective.
yes, exactly. And I was speaking about history at the beginning, and that's really one thing that has been studied by anthropologists, like the function of music as social cohesion, you know, for making groups. And it's amazing that all culture of the world have music, and the function of music is not only to transmit emotion, etc., but also to reinforce social cohesion. That's something that was put forward by this anthropologist. So sure, I think that all this, you know, I mean, we are complex human beings, and there are many different factors that interfere and that come together. And I think that if you are well-being, if you are happy, and if you share a sense of community, and if you develop, that will help you develop empathy, that will help you develop social bounds, and therefore, in terms of teaching, you are in much better condition to learn than if you are by yourself, sad and not motivated. Motivation is also a very important factor, really important. Yeah.
And I know you have not finished because you're telling that you are right starting that singing every morning effect. But I found it lovely because when I grew up in Germany, and in Germany, my teacher, hairdresser, he was very fond of making us sing every morning. We did it every morning. We sang every morning. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
but you see that's very interesting because this is all practice in some way, Like I think that my grandmother was singing at school every morning, my mother too, but little by little it disappeared. In France,
it disappeared.
little by little
Disappeared.
it disappeared. And now we realize how good it was for children to wake up, to wake up their body, and then they are more alert because they have been doing some awakening and pleasant activity. So yes.
But is it the same singing than playing an instrument? Would it have the same effect? Do you think so?
No, that I don't know yet.
Okay, that is one of their great expectations.
I will find it. I don't think so. I think that, but I think that by studying singing, we will have to use test of speech production, which I have done before. So if you have any advice, I will be really happy to hear what you think about that, because I think that singing is really going to help speaking.
Yeah, that's it. From a foreign language perspective, that is what I was thinking.
And there are not so many studies, but there are some studies by Christine Reiterer and Christina and Reiterer, and they show that it also influences phonological awareness.
That's it.
So phonological awareness, as we know, is really also
it's a predictor of reading.
Yes. And also auditory memory, because the children, they learn the song and they learn the song by heart. So, but I also think that it will have a very a strong influence on executive function, because they really sing together, and they sing, they also practice singing in groups. One start, I don't know what is the name in English, one start first, and then the second one, and then the third one.
The chorus,
Yes. And it's very demanding to have children do that. And therefore, they have to refrain singing. They have to sing at the right time. And therefore, I think it's also going to have some implication on their executive function. So, there is a new area of tests and of abilities to look at.
Yes, to come again, and right now questions are coming, and I will leave space for the questions. I remember that actually, I remember one of the topics written by the articles written by Susan Reiter, and she said from University of Vienna, and she the title was a Pavarotti is not a Mozart. And actually Pavarotti, a singer, he sang in different languages, but he was not strong at languages, while Mozart, he could speak even 5 different languages. So Mozart was, and it was because he played. So is there, we still need to know. So there's still room for research and for go on and working on the topic. That is what.
And amazingly, there is really little research on singing, and also it's it is also coming from the fact that musicians consider that singers are not really musicians.
Yeah, I know. That is another topic.
Hierarchies that I've been speaking with many different musicians, and they say, no, singers, they are not really musicians.
So the same.
You study singers. So right. I think it had some impact, and we started with musicians, but now time is ripe to go to other population, and singers may be very interesting too.
So I think that is how.
I think it's your turn.
Yeah. I think researching on singing, it's like hope for those of us who didn't have any music training and who would like to see if it's possible, because not all people or not all schools have access to musical instruments. However, all of us can sing.
Exactly.
So I think that would be great if we could find out something related to that. So that aspect of music training, but it's singing, not really, or not only music training. Well, there are some questions already.
But just to add a word on that, I think that that's a very good point, and that we have to keep in mind also using diverse tests, because if we can show that singing or creative writing, each one has his own specificity, but both contribute to children cognitive development, it's really good, you know, and really, as you say, it's with low means, so everybody can do it. That would be, I hope we will.
We'll go to that. Well, Elena Legas from Belgium, she says, thanks, Mireille, very interesting. Could you please tell us a bit more about the far and near transfer between music and language?
Yes, that's a very good question. We speak of near transfer when, for instance, when I start about the acoustic properties, you know, like since music and speech share the same acoustic parameter, then it is near transfer, because you are trained in pitch or you are trained in tempo in music, and that will directly influence the perception of quantitative language or tone languages, because these languages, pitch and duration, are very important. So that's the same acoustic parameter. So here we speak about near transfer. Now, if we demonstrate, for instance, that being a musician allow you to learn the meaning of novel word better than non-musician, now we are speaking about semantics, the meaning of words. So we are speaking of a much higher level in speech, right? And therefore here we speak about far transfer effect. Also, if we find an effect of musicianship or of musical training on memory, you know, memory is not really exactly the same as acoustic parameter. Of course, it's important to hear what you will retain in memory, but memory is further away. So here we speak about far transfer. Is that clear?
I think so. I guess she will be. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Everything clear. Oh, something related to singing again. Carmen Toscano writes, if the song has subtitles while they're singing, it also affects reading, pronunciation, because they are reading and singing at the same time, probably. That's what she says.
If the song has subtitles.
In a song with subtitles, like having a video clip with the subtitles, children are singing and they are reading at the same time.
Very good. Yes, that's not at all what we what the music teacher is, what the singer is training them to do, but that could be a very good idea, yes, because then you train both at the same time. Maybe we could, but you know, it's always the same. I was thinking maybe we could have a control group in which we have this, but then it increases the study. And as I say, longitudinal studies are really, they're very interesting, but very difficult to conduct. So it's very difficult to have many different control groups. But I think it's a very good idea. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Carmen.
Interesting. Yes. And then Javier Avila says bilingualism is the product of languages in contact. That this apply to language and music? So should we be vigilant on the reduction of the role of music in schools? This is related to what you said. Shall we aim towards bilingualism in language and music as well?
Yes, me, you know, I will really push on that. I'm really convinced, but for many different reasons. But I'm really convinced that music training at school is really something that should be implemented again. You know, it was at some point, and then with the change in education practice, it disappeared. But I think that really it should be put again, and in a very nice way. I mean, like, you know, one of the things that Stephen was saying yesterday is that you have to make things interesting for people to learn. You know, why fiction? Because, you know, when you self-select a book of fiction, of course you are going to be happy to read it. Okay, it's the same for music. You know, not all the children will like music, but if you find a way to make music attractive, I think it can have an impact on many different cognitive functions that are very important to learn in general, to learn another language, to learn mathematics, to, in some way, it will put you in a good frame of mind. Of course, it doesn't work every day. Of course, it doesn't work for everybody. Of course, you have a lot of variability. But overall, you know, I think that will have very nice effect, and with little cost, you know, because there are a lot of musicians, a lot of people love music, a lot of musicians are without job, and they will be happy to go to school. I mean, I have a lot of I know a lot of people who are ready to do that, and to teach children music, playing music, you know, really with the idea of playing, you know, playing is at the basis of learning, really.
You're right. And just another question, because very often people say, yes, but there are people who do not like music, who do not enjoy music.
There are people who do not like music.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. And well, I'm not sure.
So what should we do in the classroom? Should we use, yeah, because we are talking about from the educational perspective. So there are people who do not enjoy music, or they it wouldn't be a benefit for them because they cannot see the point of using it. So I mean, for instance, what happens, for example, with the people who suffer from and there are people who suffer from amusia. Do you know anything from that?
Yes. Well, amusia is something a little bit different. It's not really that you don't like music, it's that you have a problem in perceiving music. Isabelle Perez has been working a lot about a music patient, but it was more on the point of view of um, what changes in the brain make you a music, you know, neuropsychological brain imaging perspective. And it's different from people who don't like music. But of course, I mean, you know, we have to accept variability, and not all the children will like music, but I think there is always a way through, you know, like for instance, we have been working with dyslexics a lot. And Michel Habib is a neurologist who is responsible for dealing with dyslexia in all the region around Marseille. And he got very interested in this music training possibility. Why? Because there are some dyslexic children who are really tired of working on language. You know, they have language difficulties at school, and then they go out of school and they have to go and see the speech therapist. And and they become completely closed and reluctant. Okay. And so he's saying that with these children who really have difficulties with language, music is a wonderful way, because they are so happy to do something else, and they improve tremendously because they use another pathway, you see. And so I think that with children who don't like music, okay, you don't like playing the piano, you don't like playing the trombone, you don't like playing the guitar, you don't like playing the drums. I mean, you have so many possibilities that I think that, you know, you will find one way to interest the child, you know. And I think that if a child tells you, I don't like music, there is a problem somewhere, you know, because
sure.
music is really so much sharing between people, so much, you know, common activity, so much fun, so much playing, that if you have a child who say, no, I don't play music, it's because there is something wrong somewhere, and that's what you have to find out.
Yeah, right. There's still a question.
Yeah, we have one more question.
Yes.
By Andres, he wrote, does it make sense to speak about music semantics in the same way as language? So as far as I know, he writes, syntax is known to be processed in a similar way in both language and music. Does it apply to semantics as well?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I've been working for that for 20 years and I still don't have the answer. But I love it. I mean, I think that's how I started actually, really in the 90s. In the 90s, I in the 80s, Marta Kutas, who is a very well-known researcher in California, San Diego, discovered a component of the brain electrical activity that is called the N400. It doesn't matter the detail, but the point is that this component is elicited by your brain when you hear a word that is incongruous in a sentence. For instance, if I say, I drink coffee with cream and dog, when I say the word dog, suddenly your brain did generate an N400 component, okay? Because it is really incongruous semantically to speak about dog while you expect the word cream, okay? So my PhD thesis, which was in '84, was to compare this, so sentences in language which end with incongruous words, and musical phrases ending with a wrong note or with a normal note. And me, I found different effect. I didn't find the N400 with music. And so we say, okay, semantics in music is really not the same as in language. But 20 years later, Stefan Kölsch, I think it's in 2004, Stefan Kölsch, who is a very well-known music researcher, made a very beautiful study that was published in Nature or in Science, and in which he did something like, I have a slide for this study, but I may remember like that. He had sentences that ended with a congruous or incongruous word, so he has the N400 effect. And then he has a musical phrase, which the musical phrase, for instance, was really very, very cool, very pacific, very calm. And then he presented a word on the screen, violent, which didn't go at all with the musical piece. And another word, calm or quiet, that fit very well. And he also got an N400 effect. So the N400 effect was generated by the music, but it was a word. The word did not fit with the music. You see the difference? I mean, so yes, there were some semantics in the music that were leading you to expect a word, quiet, calm, and if you were presented with the word violent, then you had an N400 effect. So my answer will be, we still don't know about semantics in music, and it's a very fascinating and complicated question, but there is some evidence that you can trigger similar effect. And just about syntax, yes, syntax is much more easy in some way, because syntax is word order and syntax is harmony. And therefore, if you do violation of word order in language, we know what kind of brain effect we get. We get an Iran, an Elan, a syntactic positive shift. So this is pretty well known. And if you do that in music, you also get similar effect, really. So syntax in music and language is much easier to demonstrate the similarity. With semantics is another world.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting. Thank you. Well, there are a couple of comments from the attendees. The arts, Anna still says, the arts are different ways of self-expression. The lack of music in the education system in Spain refers to the practical, enjoyable aspect of singing, playing instruments, creative movement. It is a music theory and history of music with an additional academic focus. overloading the curriculum with subjects that has to be studied, okay, with evaluation and so on. And then she asked a question: do you have any suggestions for the European Commission to support active music in schools and how it can be included in the Common European Framework for Quality Education?
Yes, I think that would be a very important, I think we should all join together to make this kind of recommendation, because we do have a lot of data, really showing that music training has a strong impact. And I think it will really, if we were all together with collective intelligence, what we speak about these days, thinking about ways to implement that in the school curriculum, it will be really easy. I mean, we can come up with really good ideas and make very, very, very clear and strong suggestions, because we have all been working in school. We know how the school system here. We know children. We know the problems they are, what they like, what they don't like. And so by putting together our common experience, I think that yes, we can come up with very good recommendations.
Thank you very much.
Very nice. Andres is thanking you, and he writes that you have been a great inspiration for my thesis.
Very good. I'm really happy to hear that. Very good.
Olga Sanchez is inviting us to a sound therapy music event in Malaga that is going to be celebrated in August. And I think Chris Bruce also shared a link to an interesting document, Music on Traveled Soils, which is related to that low socioeconomic backgrounds population and the effect of music on them.
So I'll be very interested, yes. And also, I didn't say it, but if you want to distribute my presentation, the PDF, to people who are interested, of course, I'd be pleased to share that.
Excellent, excellent. Just one question that I have, and I don't know if you have a hypothesis about why those children from low socioeconomic backgrounds are like more or better influenced by the use of music. Why does music have a stronger impact on them?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question and very important. I think that, children from low socioeconomic background, often they miss, as Steve was saying yesterday, there is no book at home. Parents are very busy, they come back late. They are very often by themselves. The only fact that you are taking care of them to do some playful activity, but which is at the same time very serious, because learning music or learning to sing is very serious activity. At the same time, it is very playful, but at the same time, it is very strict. In the singing class that I'm telling you about, the teacher she's really nice and soft, but she really makes the children sing correctly, and she really teaches them to sing. So they really learn something, they really learn something with somebody who is interested in teaching them this thing. And they are like in some way, I don't know, it is also the aspect that it is, it is something special, it says you are at school, and in the school that we are working in, the teachers are wonderful. I mean, they are really dedicated. They know all the children. They are very strong. They are really, and they also participate to the singing class and to the creative writing class. So they are really involved in the program. So I don't want to say that the teachers are not good. On the contrary, they are wonderful. But if you add something, music or singing, it also it keeps this kind of unusual and attractive, and so I think that for the children who never have this kind of opportunity, it has an even stronger effect, because if you are in a high class family, you have music at home, you have instrument at home, you have movie, you have many things, and parents are really they are really sharing time with you, they are reading with you, they are maybe playing music with you. So and in low socioeconomic background, parents don't have time to do that, so
it may also be related then to those affective issues, affective aspects, like I'm being treated as someone special, someone is paying attention to me, I feel good, I feel appreciated.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, I think all these variable and factors play major role in the effect of music. Not only, but also. Yes.
Very nice, very nice. There is another question by Elena. I know it's a little bit late, so a couple of more things and then we stop. Another question completely different. She writes, would you encourage people that believe that cannot make music because they think they are not able to do that or they do it badly to further trying? Would you encourage them to further trying to play music?
Yes, I think I think that's really important, that you always have to find a way. If you start playing music at 40 years old, I don't think you will become a great concertist. But what is the point? I mean, as far as you enjoy playing the music, as far as you enjoy doing it, that will be all benefit. So yes, I think that, if people I mean, get me right. I'm not saying that everybody should do music, should play music. I think that I have very good friends who are sailors and they sail all the time and they listen to music, but they don't want to be a musician. And of course, we are not going to force them to be musician. And same for the children. You have children who love to be climbing and they spend all their free time climbing, and it's wonderful. They are out with nature. And but as a regular school activity, I think that music really has a lot of advantages because, as I mentioned in my talk, it is really multidimensional. Music helps you with attention, music helps you with concentration, music helps you with memory, music helps you with all what is the auditory system. So it's a lot, and it's really not so difficult to implement. So why lose the benefit of some activity that has an impact on many different cognitive function, and that can be at the same time made very enjoyable, and as Carmen was mentioning before, increase social cohesion, group empathy, and all these things. So, and also really, I think we should make strong effort to push that in education. Now we have really strong bases. We have very strong scientific evidence that to really push this.
There's the people are saying this conference is fantastic. Thank you very much. And then they're saying something in French, but your French is much better.
Yes,
than
I'm
mine.
going to read
I
it.
cannot read. I don't want to read it aloud because your French is better.
Yes, it's a very nice. Yes, the Eva Adam will say, yeah, very good. Thank you, Eva. Very nice anecdote. She says that in the school of her children, every morning they go into school in music, and one morning there was a shortcut of current, so no music, and the children didn't want to go to school.
That's fine. So we need more people like you talking about music and education. Thanks a lot. Very inspiring. Merci beaucoup. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. So in fact, yes, we are coming to the end because it has been a good
Yes.
time. So thank you, Mireille, for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. It has been a wonderful lecture, and this discussion has been very, very, very helpful. So I hope we meet soon again, and please have a very, very nice time on your leave, and enjoy your sailing, and I hope we will see soon again.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you all. I was really happy to be with you, and I'm really looking forward to see all of you in Rio again, and that we can discuss even more all this fascinating issue. So thank you very much for organizing this. It was wonderful. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure as usual. Look, everybody, what they are writing. Thank you. Everybody play music, instruments. Thank you very
It's
much.
wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. And we all play music.
Yes, we will.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Hasta
Ciao, ciao.
pronto.
Have
Ciao.
a very nice
much.
time.
Bye
Ciao,
bye.
ciao.
Thank you. Goodbye. Well, some people are saying hope to form a community of learning and teaching. You can get in contact with us in the website for Musiclang, musiclang.net. So there you can contact us, okay?
You only have to write Musiclang on Google and then it comes out. Yeah,
And there
okay.
we are.
Because we changed a bit the place where it was. It was first, it was Musiclang.net. Now it's Musiclang, and Correo Web, it is on another platform. Yeah, but there you have more information. And
Yeah.
here we are for everyone who needs to have more information on this topic. Tomorrow we meet again. Tomorrow with Sonja Klotz. For those interested and deeping a bit inside this topic of music and language, tomorrow we come again, and we will meet. So thank you very much.
Thank
and
you very
have
much.
a very nice rest of the day wherever you are.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye bye. See you.
Bye. See you.